Alright, hello class. In this video I'm just going to finish up this playlist with a couple tweaks. They're optional. Way back I think in the first video in this playlist I added a satellite image, which I said was great. So easy, get instantaneous context. You put transparency in it like I've done here to fade it back so it's not too strong, and it makes your rendering read. That's the easy way to do. But there are a few little advanced techniques I'm going to show that you can sort of play with the satellite image a little bit to make your building, or not your building, but your whole site plan sort of tell the story of what you want it to tell. There's actually two options that I'm going to do in two different videos. This first one is a simple sort of feather where I'll actually lighten the satellite around my site plan, therefore making my site plan stand out even more as an interesting technique. And then I'll show the inverse of that because sometimes I'll do that as well. That can be a little more complicated. I'll do that in a follow-up video. So the first thing I'm going to do is, since I am going to sort of play with transparencies essentially of my site plan as a whole, I want to start at the high end. Right now it's too faded. If I don't want to do any of these steps, perfect. It's fine the way it is. But I'm going to take up my transparency, usually not to 100%, but up significantly. And so when I do that, I set it to 75% here. We can see it almost blends too much in with my site. It's not bad, but maybe you want to highlight your site a little bit. So I'm going to lock that layer. Again, usually the satellite layer is my bottom layer, and I'm going to make a new layer above it, and I'm going to call it feather because I'm going to use the feather technique primarily, the effect. And I'm just going to set that, and I'm going to set my stroke to nothing and my fill to white as I already have done, and I'm just going to trace out my property line because this property area is real easy to do, so I can just trace it out. If it was a little more complex, you could always, since you already have that shape drawn in a layer above, you could copy it out and paste it into this layer and set it to just a white fill. Now, of course, we don't see any of the white fill because it is behind all the rendering stuff. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make it bigger, and I'm going to use the effect transform tool and to scale it up in here. Now you could use scale over here, or you could use scale under edit. Those would also work just as well. The only difference is by using it under effects, I can go and change this back at any time more easily. If I don't like what I did, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, who knows when. And so it's a little easier to have flexibility. So that's why I like using it here. And in this case, I'm going to scale by 150%. We'll do a little preview there. We'll see that I've got this white block sticking out here. Okay, and of course this is just step one. It doesn't look right. It just shows I'm seeing this white block that I put there beyond my site plan. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to effects, and this is why I called it feather, because I'm going to apply a feather to it. And I want the feather in this case to be pretty big because I have a pretty big size of white box here. So I'm going to do something like 2 inches, and we can do preview if you want to see what it looks like. And we can see when I do that, it fades out from the edge to the white object and has this feather effect. And that really starts to make the site plan pop against the satellite image, because what's happening is this edge now is just about as light as it was when I started this video, but now out along the edges out here it's darker, so I can read the context out here a little better, which is where the other streets are happening, right? So I'm allowing that to read out here, but the less important information about some farmland or whatever is being faded out, so it's making this pop like, hey, this is the project. So it can work really good under a condition like this. I have a little bit of flexibility. I think that's pretty good, but maybe you think, and I do sort of think, that this white feather is still a little dark, so I could go and edit the feather under the appearances or anything like that, or I could come through and just reduce the transparency of this a little bit, and we can see that feather then just fades just a little bit. So I could go with that and say, yep, that's perfect, that's what I want. And it's a nice little effect. Again, it adds a little more interest in the surrounding area. Just adds a little bit of texture that can be done really quickly to enhance your drawing. So that's one way of doing it if you do it at all. In the next video, I'll show the inverse, which is it gets whiter around the edges and darker around the center.